Good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. This is the I Caliber Man podcast with myself, Hugh Mayers, and this week I'm joined by broadcast journalist DJ Supreme from Conscious Radio. I used to say Conscious FM in error, but it's Conscious Radio, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
What's the name of your show, Supreme?
Okay, my show's called The More Knowledge Show.
Okay, all right, and I must thank you first of all for coming through. It's a pleasure. We had many a conversation, but mainly on your platform. Or your partner in crime is usually with us as well, Lady Essie. So shout out to Lady Essie.
Yeah.
Hope that she can jump in the space next time. But yeah, I wanted to get some of your reflections and some of your thoughts related to the media. And the reason why I was thinking about that is because recently there was just the end of April, there was a unfortunate sword attack,
Mm.
and five people were injured, and one out of the five fatal, a young black boy, young African boy, lost his life. And so there's been some questionable coverage related to the story. But before we even focus just on that story, I want to kind of like get your thoughts and reflections about how do you see the UK media and their representation, right, of minority communities, BAME communities, black and people of color. So not necessarily just black people, but people of color in the UK. How you seen it historically?
Um, this is a very interesting topic that you've touched on, and even as we're talking, I'm going on a timeline of what did I used to get information and news about the black community, my community, and news that I thought was interesting. And if you
Mm-hmm.
went back in the days, there wasn't a lot of black newspapers or platforms out there um, um, showing our community in the light that we kind of grow around. So when we looked at the media and journalism, and we look at broadcasting, most of it was appropriated from other people, and looking at this appropriation, some of them, I'm going to say probably 90% of the appropriation never really made us look good or was newsworthy for the mainstream. We became mainstream only when it was incidents. I remember, I think going back, there was this thing about the word mugging.
Yes.
And there's certain words that they use that always conjures up it was a black person if they didn't blatantly say it's a black person. So
Mm-hmm.
even in certain words and terminology, and even us, there was this thing where when we listen to the news, we're always sitting on the edge when we hear there was a murder or a killing, and we think, oh, please, 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 is it a black man? That's all we were thinking.
Oh yeah. I do. I
What
can relate. I can relate.
and the reason I would say that is because that's how they've put us. Like, bad news was always related with black people. Black our community, sadly. So we were looked on as really as like feral. Um,
Man
yeah,
said feral. So like a problem, like
yeah.
the black problem.
Well, let's look at what's this uh what's this? Oh, his name's gone out my head, but he made a speech called "The Rivers of Blood."
Oh, Enoch.
Yeah, look at that.
Enoch Powell.
Yeah,
Extremely inflammatory.
yeah. If we look at
Extremely
that, and I
inflammatory.
don't
Yeah.
know if you could put a soundbite in what he said for those that are possibly not in the UK that don't know who he was, but internationally, I would say for people just to Google
Infamous speech, you know.
Yeah, the speech was like, come on, what's going on? Rivers of blood, and the way if we keep these people in the country, you know, do you want this? I'm going to use N word to be your next door neighbor. Do you understand? So we were always pictured in a light, and I've got to say they even used television to enforce the stereotype. I remember back in the day we had Love Thy Neighbor. The comedians were blatant with racism
Yeah,
about
there
us.
was no microaggressions. That was just out and out. That was out. That was before the era of microaggression.
Yeah, but this is interesting because even that was out there, we still laughed at ourselves. That actor now is now I forgot his name. He's now in EastEnders.
Oh, the black
But
guy. Yeah, yeah, yeah. The Trinidadian man. The Trinidadian man. Yeah.
Rudolph Walker, yeah. But Rudolph Walker back in the day was he's in you know, you had a black couple living next door to a white couple, and he kept calling him Nignog, and we used to laugh. Ah, it's Nignog, Nignog, and the other one would call him Honky. You know what I mean? So, but you
That
know,
was
we
well
oh
before. That was well before the time of PC. Just to add on to that, there was a program called Mind Your Language, where I think
yeah,
it was every like ethnic stereotype. That wasn't just racial. That was like, you know what I mean? Asian. There was a Sikh. There was a Pakistani guy, and Pakistan and India were at war in them days. So
yeah,
there was that all those stereotypes being played out about Asian people. I think there was a Spanish guy, the Italian guy. You know what I
yeah.
mean? All these characters were very
But
stereotypical. You couldn't
yeah,
get away
you
with
look
that now.
on.
We couldn't get away with
Remember,
that.
right? There was a program,
Rigby.
Rising Damp.
Mm.
Um, and then you had oh, oh, I forgot his name, but in the end they found that he was Jewish, but he used to play this part as a bigot.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And oh,
I
what
know
is
the
he?
problem that you're talking about. I've garnet, yeah.
Yes,
And
that's it.
and the thing about it is that I think that that was supposed to be. I don't know if the word is satire, right? Or like sending up, because sometimes they say, oh look, let's make fun of this particular stereotype. So this man's
Mm,
supposed to be an out and out racist. He's supposed to look like a moron and a dinosaur. But
mm,
I think that they took it off the TV because people was laughing and it didn't have that effect. So if
yeah,
it was supposed to be parody, people took it people not serious because that'd be kind of a paradox taking the comedy serious. But you know what I'm trying to say to you? They didn't take the comedian as a parody. They took it as, oh, it's just a funny guy being himself. So
yeah,
it kind of had a reverse effect that it appealed to racist sentiments. You know what I'm saying? Which is mad,
yeah.
which
So
is absolutely
we're
crazy.
touching on we are touching on, and we're going to lead on to the point of this conversation because even if you looked at Lenny Henry back in the days,
Do we
there
have
was
to?
a time when I
Do we
did
have
not
to? Do
like.
we have to?
I do, yeah, Lenny Henry was can we use the word coonery buffoonery?
Oh my God. I know that he would cringe himself.
Yeah, now he
Yeah,
would.
some of the jokes that he did was really playing to the white gaze in a different kind of way. I am mindful that he was a working class guy, right?
Mm,
I'm not making an excuse, but I'm saying, and like probably on TV when he was like 15, 16. So in terms of his racial politics, they weren't ideal, right? I'm putting it as an understatement, but I'm contextualizing it as like all of us or most of us as humans would have done stuff at 16. Not necessarily coonery or buffoonery, but stuff at 16 that if we look back
yeah,
as middle-aged men or in our 40s or whatever, we like cringe, like, wow, I was, whoa, did I really wear that? Or did I say that? Or did I really stand for some of those things? So I do
yeah.
take that into account, but he spent a lot of time in that sphere, more
But
sophisticated, but that sphere of
yeah.
stereotyping and playing to the white gaze in a particular way.
But it's interesting because in comedy they do call that as there's a word they use called self-deprecation. When
Yes.
you make yourself the joke, you make
Yes.
yourself the joke, but you don't make your community the joke.
Yeah, you the individual self-deprecate. Yeah,
You understand?
yeah. Like,
But the way how
I don't
he,
know how much mileage there would be for like a Sikh guy to get up there and make jokes about brown people and Sikhism and the Sikh community and just
yeah,
and unless he's doing it at a Sikh wedding, so it's in the
yeah,
house. You get what I'm trying to say to you? Like there's a difference
yeah,
between a Jamaican comedian making jokes about what we do as Jamaicans,
yeah,
right? Amongst Jamaican people, or going on a stage at the Royal Albert Hall in London, and it's like a more or less a mainstream white audience, and
mm,
playing up some of those stereotypes. That kind of works very differently. That works very
yeah,
differently. But you're talking about in entertainment media. But what about the
yeah.
news media? I want to get you onto because it's all media. It's
Okay,
all
you know what
medium.
I'm gonna
It's
do?
all contact with the public. It's all forming a narrative about people, isn't it? It's all part of
Yeah.
it. So I don't dismiss it, but I want to bring it now. What about the hard news? Bring us back to some of the
Okay.
hard news and
So
your perspective on
before
it.
we move on,
Uh-huh.
I just wanna mention, right? I'm gonna mention 20 points of what they would class as bad journalism.
Okay,
So I'm
talk to
just
me.
gonna quickly
Talk to
go
us.
on those
Talk
points,
to
and
us.
if we want to explore it, I'll just read the blurb that went with it.
Go for it.
So we've got inaccuracy,
Mm-hmm.
lack of objectivity,
Mm-hmm.
sensationalism,
Mm-hmm.
lack of verification, plagiarism, lack of transparency, clickbait, lack of accountability, unverified information,
Mm-hmm.
propagation of misinformation, ethical violation, conflict of interest, lack of fact finding or fact checking, I should say, lack of diversity, infotainment. So I'm going to leave it. That's the,
That's a heavy template there, bro. That's a
I
very
know.
heavy
So
template.
um, I just like to ask you,
Yeah.
what one would you think Sword Lad would come under?
Um, oh yeah, so the headline, Sword Lad. So let's give maybe we'll give a little background for some of
Oh, yeah.
our viewers. So recently, as I mentioned, on the 30th of Tuesday, 30th of April, yeah, there was a man that went on a rampage. The man's name is Marcus Aurelio Adjuni Monzo. I might have butchered his name, I might have mutilated his name, whatever the case may be, but he is charged with murder because he was caught at the scene. He basically went on a rampage with a samurai sword. He injured, I think, two officers, two other members of the public, and the fifth person was a young boy, Daniel Adjorin. May his soul rest in peace. He later died in hospital, I think, hours later from his wounds. And so, yeah, so the Sun newspaper, that shameless right-wing rag, and it's not because they're right-wing, I'm just contextualizing. They could have been a left-wing rag, you know what I mean? But a right-wing style had a headline where they referred to him, and it was a small, very small story on the front page. So they got a big football transfer taken up the main page. Got a picture of this young, smart looking, little black boy. Picture underneath, I mean, sorry, picture, and then underneath says, Family's tribute to Sword Lad 14.
Mm.
Sensationalist, um, clickbait, you could say, type terminology. And I guess like what we were saying earlier on when we were speaking recently, when we said, was that accidental or was that strategic? I'll throw it back to you,
Yeah,
Supreme.
you know
Was
what?
it an oversight? Was it an oversight and just
Well,
poor
well,
journalism, or was that some sort of calculated move to get people
yeah.
talking about the sun?
Well, it's very interesting what you said because you picked the same 2 points that I was thinking of, and that was sensationalism. And this says is a form of bad journalism prioritizing sensational and attention grabbing headlines or content of over accuracy and objectivity. This can lead to exaggeration or distortion of facts to increase readership or viewership. That's sensationalism. Clickbait. Bad journalism, bad journalism can resort to clickbait techniques to attract more readers or viewers. This includes using sensational or misleading headlines, images, or information to encourage clicks, often leading to disappointing or irrelevant content. So I would say that that person who wrote the article, they used those two styles. And before that piece of work went out, it was probably looked over by various people before they put it on the front.
Various qualified, experienced professionals,
Yeah.
not just the editor whose name, not just the editor, but probably an editing team, you could say.
Yeah. So you said something which is interesting. Front page. So you're on the front page. So they're actually going to say, this is on the front page. It's not going to be on the back page. So what are you going to do that it grabs your attention?
But you say, right, so you say grab attention.
Yeah.
At a glance, what comes to mind is at a glance, if you didn't know about the story, you might think Sword Boy means swords was his favorite toy, or he was a collector of swords, or that if it was a murder case and you're hearing the word Sword Boy, you might be thinking, oh, was he the perpetrator? At a glance, I'm saying, at a glance. Because it doesn't cover him as, it doesn't sound like somebody a victim, does it?
Yeah, but it's very interesting that you've put a sword, which is a weapon, and did you what was the other word he used? Lad or boy?
Yeah, lad.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, straight away it would make you think, what's that about? A sword and a lad? What does he collect swords? What's this about? So it obviously I haven't seen the
It's tiny. It's tiny. It's the smallest. It's a passport picture, right? Next to some big other, football thing as an item on the front page.
But like you said, where was it put on the front page? Your front page is where you're going to look for impact. The front is because that's what's the front page. What you put on the front page, actually, that front page may lead on to a fuller article somewhere in the third or fourth page, or later on in there. But it's probably used as a way of sword lad, and you have the little blurb and the picture, and then you read a bigger journal about what the person's trying to get over with sword lad. Yeah. So when you look at it, I haven't read it, but was it empathetic? Was it sympathetic? Was it, if it was someone of status or royalty, how was it seen?
Or even just somebody that's seen as human, that's fully human, right? And I'm gonna go there. I'm saying that particularly papers like The Sun, and there's a stories that we have, but then there's a narrative. And if you think about how people of color are represented in the mainstream, and that's whether that's black people or people from the Muslim community, not saying that those things are mutually exclusive, but it does say those are two communities in Britain which are quite antagonistic in terms of the press coverage. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if I was to talk about, if you're talking about like the West and Orient, there's another subject that we probably could cover another time, is Orientalism, how the West cover or are they sort of stereotype people from the Middle East and from Asia. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like barbaric and religious fanatics and stuff like that. And they've got a box for them. They're in that box. And they will always be the press tend to lead stories by kind of couching people from those communities in a certain way, right? And we've had that experience in the Black community where Black boys in particular, Black men, should I say, in particular, you know, like you said, muggers from the 70s. There was always a headline, isn't it?
Yeah,
Right. There was a stereotype that was created that, you know, Black men are dangerous or Black men are, you know, sexual predators or, you know, there's certain, you know,
yeah,
things that, you know, oh, we're only good at sports. There's certain stereotypes that we've been subjected to from the UK, you know, from the UK press in terms of the Black community. But I'm just showing
yeah,
it I was just bringing it up for the listeners as a kind of comparison.
yeah. And we
It's a
can also
method.
look at
It's a
we
method
can
that they use. It's a method that they
yeah,
use for racialized communities that are not in good standing. Like the Sikh community, maybe they stay in their lane, they go to the temple, they come home. They're not really known for being politicized in any way. But if you got, I'm just using this as an example, if you got like Black communities known for agitating for justice and for, you know, Joy Gardner or, you know, different things have happened and there's people
yeah,
marching and protesting and challenging the system. Or you got another community where they're saying free Palestine and they're involved in geopolitics or they have an opinion about what's going on in the bombing of Iraq and stuff like that. Notice how those two communities get kind of framed in a certain way in mainstream media. But let me give you back the mic, bro, because I invited you to get your perspective on
yeah.
it. I'm just
I
getting
love what
heated. I'm just getting heated, you know what I mean? But yeah,
but
jump
this
in,
is
man,
it.
jump in.
Well, let's look at negative propaganda. That because basically that's what you're touching on. Like, there's a propaganda of something. It doesn't mean it's true. It's negative, but it worsens the image of that particular person.
Wasn't that from your
Or
template?
it's
Bad journalism, inaccuracy. I think you said inaccuracy.
yeah. So I'm just saying that negative propaganda.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it goes back into when we were at school, we were only taught certain histories.
Okay.
We weren't taught come from a Black perspective how powerful we were. We were kings and queens. We don't have that. Well, I'm going to say back in the day that wasn't in your lesson to empower you. Most of
Mm-hmm.
the history would probably be making us the lower class, the stereotype of we're lazy, and these are the things that, and I'm going to use that the psychology of what is being used on us has actually controlled us
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and kept us down. You know
I'd have to
that
agree.
some of the psychology, they don't have to use it on us. It's almost come part of our DNA.
Mm.
That even when we look at each other, we don't look at each other positively.
Do you remember Khalid Mohammed?
No, I don't know him now.
Okay, Khalid Mohammed used to be when did he die? He died, I think, in early 2000. Yeah,
Mm,
he was an activist, Nation, Black Panther, new Black Panther, should I say, not the original Black Panther, new Black Panther, etc., etc. Dr. Khalid um, was a firebrand, was a shock jock, but was very erudite. But he
mm,
used the reason why I'm quoting him is because he used to say something in terms of he used to use this phrase for African Americans, right? He talked about miseducation and said automatic, systematic remote control. You know what I mean? That if you misteach a people or you educate a people in a particular way, it's like a Mancurian candidate. You can predict, it's forecastable how these people are, you know, for the best part will operate because you've kind of like given them a certain mindset, you've given them a certain understanding, you know? And so it just struck a chord when you said that about you know, the history and stuff like that. Do you think things have changed though? Because we've spoken from a historical perspective, we've touched on the sun, but do you think that there's been some shifts in the media in the mainstream of like how racialized people from racialized communities in Britain in particular, right, have been
the,
portrayed?
the, it's very interesting because I felt that there was a time when, let's go back to the days, there was days when you could do your own newsreel and put it out on DVD and sell it. When that format was out, we could have we
Or
had
like
some.
independent documentary makers, like people, small people just
Yeah,
camcordering and making like DVDs of a particular thing. In
yeah.
that,
So I'm just looking at. I loved Hidden Colors, right? I loved that series.
mm-hmm.
Right now, when we look at, because it went deep, it went back and back, and when we look at, I'm gonna say YouTube now, the platform that we're on now,
Yeah,
we have an opportunity to go direct to an audience without no filters, right? And we can control a certain narrative
mm-hmm.
out there so that people can hear the truth. Your mobile phone at the moment, because you can, as something actually happens, we can actually stream it, not edit it, so we can get direct news.
Yeah.
The problem that we've got at the moment is that YouTube is now being saturated. It's now saturated with, um, we could say with crap, even even our own people putting out
I
crap.
was just gonna say makeup tutorials as an
Yeah,
example, right? No difference to the ladies that want to learn about makeup or the young girls that want to make. But I'm just saying, like, you got
yeah,
gamers that are viral that have got
yeah.
viral videos out and makeup tutorial um teachers that have got viral videos out. So I get what you're saying. There's a lot of fluff.
But,
Let's say
all
fluff.
right, yeah. But let's ask ourselves a question: what and where do we go to find the correct information and news if an incident happens?
Good
Where
question.
do we go? What we're
Source,
not.
like what source? What source? Like
Yes,
what?
how do
Is
we
it
know
BBC? Is it
what?
official channels?
Yeah, like a true source of information,
That's a good.
right? So we're in the UK, and at the moment there's only one black newspaper, which is The Voice.
And is it
Voice
black?
newspaper.
Is it even black owned?
That
If we to
is
take
a
a deep
very
dive,
good.
if we
That,
to take,
that
take
is
a
a
deep dive.
very good question.
Yeah, there's questions, but it's definitely for a black market. So I can't dispute that. It's
Yeah,
definitely marketed for the black community.
yeah. So when we look at, and I say this because I'm on a community radio station, most of the information and news that we're getting from are from platforms that are not, can I say the word legal? Or
They're not
they
mainstream, at least they're not mainstream, right?
can I use the word, how do you feel about the word guerrilla? Guerrilla news and guerrilla
Yeah, no, I think that's a
information.
good. I think that's a good word. I think that's a good.
Yeah, yeah. So that, and they used to call this, they used to say guerrilla documentaries where, it's real, it's not edited, the person's actually doing it.
It's what
So
I think the term leads to sort of like to say it's non-corporate, right? Because you've got the corporate media,
yeah.
right, where everything's polished, but it's paid for by the big organizations. Um, Actually, finish your point. I got something to
No,
raise.
no, no, no.
I want you to go into all right then. So you said
I,
gorilla.
I just really, um,
You use that
just,
term gorilla then. You use that term gorilla.
yeah,
Interesting. Different spelling from the animal. I know some people
yeah.
use the racialized term, but it's not. It's not. It's like gorillas, like urban gorilla, like soldiers, military. There's a certain definition for it, but and it's got a different spelling. But yes, guerrilla media. But check this out. There's this guy called Noam Chomsky, right? He's from America. He's an academic. He wrote a book. I think it's a 30-year anniversary of this book, right? And it's basically about propaganda.
Mm,
He wrote this book, him and a guy called Edward Herman, right? But Chomsky's a really famous one and the one on the lecture circuit, right? I read this book about 20 years ago when I was in uni doing politics, right? The book called Manufacturing Consent, right? And it's got an interesting idea because you was just saying using you know um the internet, Facebook, YouTube, these different mediums give you direct access to the consumer, which is a person that's consuming the information, right? But he says mainstream media, they got like five parts to them, right? The ownership, right? The size and the ownership of the organization, right? For the mass media, that's one thing, right? They get advertising, because TV doesn't make enough money from people watching the things, right? It's the advertising that pays for things. Even like when you watch sporting events, and you hear, oh, Devontae Tank Davis or Tyson Fury is going to earn like 40 million. That's half of that money is from advertising, not from people just watching the fight on pay-per-view and stuff like that. It's advertising money, right? Then there's a sourcing. Where did the media get the mainstream? Where did they get the information from? Right? They're friends with people in government and stuff like that, and in big organizations, right? So are they really gonna challenge these people? That's what he was arguing, right? Are they they're brethren, isn't it? If you want to get a scoop or you want to get a story, you're around politicians, you're gonna go lunch with them and hang out with them if you're a journalist, or you're gonna be asking them difficult questions and doing exposés, right? Then the other thing he talks about is that they got enforcers in the media. If you don't follow the mainstream narrative, they'll out you like you're a madman, or come up with
Yeah.
different labels, and like the old fashioned thing of just making a person feel a certain way, right? That they discredit you, that kind of character assassination, for want of a better term. And then the last one, he talked about anti-communism, but he basically was this because the book was written 30 years ago. But there's always a boogeyman. 30 years ago, the Cold War was just coming to the end, and whatever. But if it isn't in the Middle East and the Taliban, and if it's not the Taliban, then it's the flipping Al Qaeda. You know what I mean? If it's not Al Qaeda, then what was the other one again? Daesh and all those other groups. Do you remember before COVID, right? That what was them people, them madman with the swords in the Middle East? What were they called? What was it? What was the last?
What, Al Qaeda? Not
No,
the.
this other one that was ISIS.
Okay.
There was the rage. They was eating up columns and news forums and everything like that, right? Pre-COVID. Do you know, like 20, I
Yeah.
don't know if it was 2015, 2016, 20, all these, a few years, there was the boogeyman, right? They was coming to get us,
Mm.
right? And as soon as COVID came on the scene, they went up for a tea break and they disbanded. How did they just stop being in the news? Did you not notice there was a correlation between that? They just didn't exist no more. There was every headline in the mainstream, every day was ISIS. And then COVID came, and then what happened? ISIS just what? They didn't want to. They just lost their aims and objectives. They just what did they do? Did the leader just say, "Look, we're disbanding, lads. We're just calling it quits"? Where are they?
Mm.
Mainstream, but this is what Chomsky says. He says that it's a game being played, and they're playing with people's what do you call it? They're playing with the minds of the people. It's propaganda. When you live in a democracy, if the people are informed, they'll make certain types of choices. So the job of the mainstream media is to do the bidding of the political elite. What do you think about that?
Wow. Wow. Well, you threw quite a few things, and I'm like, oof. You know what I wanted to? I just wanted to throw this very quickly in, right? So for when it comes to again, we will follow, let's say, a rap artist who's delivering news or information via his music,
Yes.
which I find interesting. There there are some that's gonna they chat rubbish then, but then you've got some that are, let's look on the Zulu Nation, let's look on KRS-One, and there's some of those people you would say, huh, they, man chatting sense and he's very intelligent, and they've
Mm-hmm.
broken it down.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I have always said, that hip hop is very, very powerful. And it's very interesting that somebody hasn't started up a hip hop party, a political party, because that
Mm-hmm.
will resonate with young people. Now, when I say hip hop and music, there's one young gentleman out there that I found he's so articulate, coming from the streets, and he never went to no university, as far as I'm concerned.
Who's
And
that?
that's a gentleman by the name of Akala. And
Mm.
you put him up. You see, when you put you put this intelligent,
Articulate. Yeah, yeah. Well,
person.
yeah, well researched young man.
Yeah. So I look and I think, we need more Akalas. But at the end of the day, I believe they are out there. The positive black youth who are going into higher education, right? But what the problem is that when they go through these, when the ones go through the higher education, they go into a field where they're in another. I'm trying to explain. They're going in another direction, which is corporate,
Okay.
because
All
they've
right.
gone through the. But I'm just, I don't even know where I was
No,
going with this. But
I wanna sort of tie it up
yeah,
because we're coming to the end of the time, and we probably have to come
yeah,
back because we've opened more questions than we've even got to the
yeah,
solutions, because there are solutions. We want to be able to hit the
yeah,
people with the solution, but we just run out. We've kind of run out of time. But I think, just to summarize, what I hear you saying is that um, you will have a community. They'll produce brilliant young people, like the Black community will produce
yeah,
brilliant young people. They could be leaders, thought leaders, right,
yeah,
in the sphere and the direction of the community. But
yeah,
they, in their brilliantness, they got to eat, they get hired, and they are they're not politicized in line with the community, but they're more, as you said, they've come corporate and they're in another direction. I think this happens in the third world, what we used to call the third world, where you get brilliant people from different poor countries, and they could be, end up being in government and leadership or whatever, but they end up going and studying engineering and going to America and I mean,
yeah,
Australia and Britain and whatever, Canada, and they call it a brain drain. So the
yeah,
sharpest minds from the developing world don't end up staying in the developing world and help it to develop. It ends up going off and working for big pharma or for, mass media or whatever, So it's that's an ongoing struggle and ongoing challenge. But I hear that what you're saying about the need for more young men and women, articulate younger men and women that could be leaders. And I agree with you that the art form does have the ears, the hearts, and the minds of the young people, whether we like it or not, whether we appreciate it or not. Um, More kids that I would have come and asked me about who do I think is winning between Kendrick and
yeah,
Drake,
yeah.
compared to anything to do with political or, you know what I mean, whatever the case may be, or Black Lives Matter or any lives matter. No, sir, who do you think's getting and washed? That's the question. You know what I mean? So the entertainers do have the ear, the hearts and minds of the young people. But yeah, only because of time, we're gonna have to pull it up there. But I really appreciate your time. But I've got to get you back and your partner in crime. I think we got to get to the bottom of this media dilemma. What do you
I
think?
actually, I think you should do a part two, and I was actually going to say that we have prosed and prompted a lot of things to think about, and one of the things I'm going to say is, if we were to go back 4 years or even before COVID, there was this film called Black Panther, Wakanda,
Mhm.
and the community felt empowered because what did they see?
Imagery, the imagery.
And we call that Afrofuturism.
Mhm.
But we saw a black superhero. We saw everything that, wow, this is powerful. We can be powerful. Look how successful the film was.
The bottom line is this: it fed the imagination,
Yeah,
and that's what we have to do with the young people.
yeah,
What we have to do with children is feed their imagination.
yeah,
Get them to exercise their imagination.
yeah,
What can they envisage? Because if they can envisage it, they might be able to create it with their hands or bring it into existence from the world of imagination into the 3D dimension that we live in. Do you know what I mean?
yeah. But what I think one of the solutions that we have to do is that we have a generation. We've got
Hey guys, thanks for watching the podcast. And if you enjoyed it, remember to smash the like button and feel free to leave a comment, to share, and even click on the subscribe button for your free subscription. Till next time, peace.